Welcome to the latest edition of Talking Timber, in which we look at or listen to the news and views from across the timber industry. And today we're going to be talking about Woodscanner, which...
Yeah, that's right. I've known Andy for a while, and I guess you're going to sort of do a little bit of an intro about him, but I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. Woodscanner is...
Woodscanner?
Well, I'll tell you what Woodscanner is. Yeah, it's described as a digital marketplace and a digital solution provider for the timber industry. It's a space for buyers and sellers of timber to come together online.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. And hi Andy, are you there?
Yeah, hi Keith, hi Mike.
Oh, hi.
I've got to say, what a pleasure to be with two doyens of the timber industry.
Yeah.
Two old dames.
Veterans.
Two old dames.
Yeah. I think the two old dames is probably nearer than the other bit. Yeah. Careful, Andy, careful. There are limits, you know.
Yeah. So Andy, we can start with a bit of you created Woodscanner. How long ago was it now?
Started it, Mike, if I was being honest, and Keith, if I was being honest with you lads, probably 25 years ago. It was in my head, 20 years ago. Yeah. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I always wanted like a virtual rep. I always wanted someone to go and talk with customers and introduce people digitally. So it's something that's been around for a long, long time, but I finally realised my ambition and was able to do it in 2018 was when I began to look for developers to help find a pathway for the digital future of the timber industry.
That's when I remember you sort of really voicing your thoughts about it, was back then, around about that time.
Yeah. So what was your kind of background in the industry? Because you're a fellow veteran, I believe.
Yeah, one of the old farts. Sorry,
It's one way of describing you. Yeah.
Well, I started in 1974, which, believe it or not, is 51 years ago.
Wow.
51 years, wow.
Yeah.
So in Liverpool, and great, when we had, everything was pens and paper, and there were no digital solutions, of course. It was just a paperwork, no mobile phones.
Yeah.
So I started with a company called WF Holloway in Liverpool. Worked in a very interesting part of the business there. My first job title was actually called Assistant Mill Office Supervisor.
Whoa.
Where we used to chase orders around the yard, say, can you do this, Billy, can you do this, Tommy? So I used to go to the yard, the mill, the primer, back to transport. And then I'd ring the sales office and say, right, okay, this order can go next Tuesday. And they'd say, that's no good, it's got to be there Friday. And I'd do the same again. And you know what? That's what stood me well in my working life, because that's what you used to have to do in a merchant business.
Yeah, absolutely.
To provide solutions.
Yeah.
So that's where it started. I came to London in 1980 and worked for a company called Carlson Timber.
I remember them.
Which was a merchant in northwest London. Had a great time there. I became their sales manager, and then I got an opportunity to work with some guys called Beaumont and set up a company called Beaumont Forest Products eventually. And I run that for, nearly 30 years.
Wow.
Before we sold it into the Grafton Group, and I became timber director there. And all along that pathway, there were opportunities to do things better. And that's what I loved about our industry. The opportunities were there.
I think,
I think great industry for people.
We are. I think one of the interesting bits is a bit of an aside. We really need to get down to business and find out about Woodscanner. But I mean, Andy and I used to compete against each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we did. But
we did.
Even that, we still talk to each other.
Really?
Yeah. Despite all of that. No, it was, seriously, and it was healthy. It was really, really healthy, and I think that's such a great part about this industry. We weren't looking to chop standards down. We were looking to outperform each other.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah.
But, sorry, we're rather digressing here, aren't we?
Well, it's not, but I think it's relevant, Keith, because I think both of us had a business, didn't we, where we like to do things properly.
Yeah.
There was something about the way we did things.
Completely.
Slightly apart, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Standards, they get you. Actually, they really do win you the business. But
we weren't price businesses, were we?
No.
We were never focused on price. No, I think that's the same with Woodscanner. It's not about price. It's about knowing, that's what the world is about, is that you want the information to make your decisions. And I think both of us, I mean, I remember when people couldn't sell a sheet of, sturdy floor or Eliottis pine plywood for $14.98. T Brewers, your company, was selling Thibault, the French plywood, at 23 quid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with a queue at the door.
Yeah.
It's understanding that this market is open to, they need to know what's available to them.
Yeah. Absolutely right.
But you also, you remain friends.
Well,
even though you
I don't know whether Andy would describe me as a friend, but
kicking lumps out of each other in the marketplace.
Well, I certainly think of him as a friend anyway.
Okay,
but
it's
great. It's really good. It's really, really good.
Yeah. So, coming to Woodscanner, the inspiration, as you said, it was about improving the process of the interconnection between buyer and seller. Is that what? Have I got that correct?
Mike, Mike, you're on the money, but I think there's a frustration. I sort of had a frustration, so I always had a bias to doing things differently. I wanted to always find better products for my business and not just for my business, for my customers. I always felt there was better options for them. But my frustration was when we missed business because we didn't know where to get it, or my staff would go and ring the people they knew because that's the way they were taught. Or if I was around, I might say try them, try this other company. But there's something about a lack of visibility and transparency in our industry, which is almost the bedrock of the industry. And so I'm trying to not disrupt that, but I do believe. Yesterday, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but yesterday I took my granddaughter to the Science Museum. And on the top floor there's a whole section of information technology and communications, back from people using Morse code right the way through to, where we are with Starlink and Elon Musk now, and the way people can connect and pass information on. And my granddaughter was 8, and she was fascinated in this, but it did make me think, coming on here today and chatting with you lads, that's really what it's about. The future evolves, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely.
And it's called, this will be called the digital age. Yeah. So our industry can't ignore that. It has to fill in with it somewhere.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to change the way things have been done historically. We're not trying to change relationship selling. But we're trying to say to some people who don't have maybe a big budget to flog their products and, can't appear on LinkedIn saying they're at this conference, they're at that conference, that with this supplier, we're flying here, we're flying there. But they still need to get their products in front of people. So we want to try and provide a gateway for that, a gateway for our industry to talk to the customer base.
So how did you start to set this up? In briefly, in a sort of a nutshell, how did you set it up?
You know what? I think we were inspired by things like, people were sending out faxes and emails with static PDFs of stock. And this is the way we sort of, began to communicate what was available. But obviously the minute the centre out of date, that.
Yeah.
And lots of people, the worst thing in our industry is, they've all got sales forces, but they don't tell you what they sell. They tell you what they think you want to know. So my idea was, hey, come on, let's open this up a little bit. I'll just make this point to you because it's important in in why we set up Woodscanner. I'd go to dinners, like we all do. You were the chairman of the Timber Trade Federation. You stood there and looked out on that audience, maybe 30 tables of 12 people.
Yeah.
And most people, and you kind of understand most people, and you wave to people and say, I'll see you next week, or we'll go and have lunch. It doesn't happen. We'll have a game of golf. It doesn't happen. You've got your 12 mates who you know all the time and you see, and another 30 people very well. But you don't really know what the bigger audience, and sometimes I used to wonder to myself, why don't these people come and see me? We're a good buyer. We pay our bills. But we never got to know them. Yeah. For whatever reason. They chose, whether they'd sold all their stock to other people. But I had this fascination, and I always wondered what all these blokes and dicky bows did, what they sold, what this Swedish company did or this Finnish company did,
So this is the chance. Yeah, this is the chance to sort of magnify the audience for those people. Yeah, and get them
transparency and visibility. Yeah, I think that's the way I see it. What's out there. We all want that now, don't we?
Yeah. And so Woodscanner launched. When did it actually go live?
I think the first, we went live on a day in 2019. I think around October 2019,
Yeah.
we just about got it live. I went to see MBM, so I know the Falcon Group now, and to do a presentation to them in Tilbury. And I did a presentation, and Stephen Sabine, who was the MD at the time, said, "You've got some 47 by 100 on there from some timber company." I said, "Yeah." He said, "We haven't got any 2.4s. Can we buy them?" I said, "Cool." And that was the first transaction done.
Wow. So literally day one.
During the presentation.
Yeah.
And I swear to you, absolutely swear to you, I walked out into the car park, and somebody I knew rang me and said, "My boss wants to talk to you. He wants to sort of really get involved with your Woodscanner. He wants to..." And I ended up in Germany.
Yeah.
All right.
To
Wow.
Berlin, with a company introducing me to, meta scientists of the digital world and, the possibilities that it had. And it didn't work out, but it was fascinating right from day one,
Yeah.
It had a connection with the industry.
Yeah.
So, just the nitty gritty of it. I mean, the suppliers, do they? I mean, they post their sort of latest offers, or do they post their sort of complete stock effectively on Woodscanner? How does that sort of work from the supplier side?
That's the idea. I mean, we have to design it. I have to go out and find designers, developers. So it's quite a big job. But what we wanted to try and do is try and replicate those stock lists that were in the industry.
Yeah, the thing that used to come out
people's desks on clipboards or wherever they were.
Yeah, came out the end of a fax machine. Yeah, I remember them.
Sorry, Keith.
Yeah.
Am I rattling on?
No, that's right.
But that was the idea. We wanted to replicate those type of things. So the idea was that we gave, after a lot of deliberation, we thought, well, let's give the sellers the opportunity to have a dashboard where they can load on their stock, they can update their stock, they can change the stock. And we thought that was a great idea. A few years later, we know that's not a great idea. But at the outset, we thought that was the perfect scenario.
Yeah.
Let the guys put the stock on, let people see what they've got. And that was our, a way of casting more transparency and visibility.
Yeah. Mm. Okay, so that's got you kicked off. So there you are, and you've made your first trade off the back of your first presentation. So not only did you get your phone call out in the car park, but you were probably doing a little bit of a little dance out in the car park as well. I can imagine you doing that little sort of,
to be honest, Keith, because
the Ferguson flip, as you, I can imagine it. Yeah, you're out in the car going like, yes.
It's a bit like, the thing about a transaction on Woodscanner, it's like selling a car. These are valuable transactions. You're not selling 10 pencils or,
I was going to ask.
T-shirts.
Yeah, I was going to ask. What's the, so far, I mean, without being too commercial about it, roughly speaking, in value or volume terms, what's the biggest sort of transaction that's gone through so far, Andy?
Well, we had a guy, there's a bit of something called disintermediation goes on, so you never really get to know, and that's one of the downsides of Woodscanner, this thing where you introduce two people, and then next time they go around you. You understand it.
Yeah.
But we did have someone come on and spend £100,000 one night.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And were they UK based or?
Yeah, UK based. That's predominantly our audience. Yeah.
And
UK based.
Fantastic.
So it works. You know the concept worked.
Yeah.
100 grand.
It did work at the time. That's.
Yeah.
I'll update you more on that as we carry on our chat.
Okay.
And I mean, the suppliers. How do they pay a subscription to be involved, or do they pay
exactly. I mean, one of the things. I mean, you guys know when you're starting a business, you're never sure of what. The one thing in you, I mean, it's relevant now because in spring we're going to launch something called Woodscanner 2.0.
Right.
Which is the updated version of our first idea. The one thing I said to everybody, and I meant this, and I'll probably mean it still at 2.0, the way we start's not going to be the way we finish.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're walking into this big vacuum of, no one had done this before.
Yeah.
I mean, there were types of things around, but nothing giving people dashboards and, being able to update things. We had smart alerts. So if you bought a product regularly, you could fill that product in on our website and we'd alert you every time that stock was updated or new stock was uploaded on the site. So it was very, very, I thought it was very smart anyway.
Yeah.
So that was, a big part of what we did.
Yeah. And getting the buyers involved. I mean, how have you done that? I mean, how have you sort of presented it to the marketplace? And is it word of mouth, or have you sort of gone out there and done?
Well, we were a bit like talking timber. We were on a restricted budget, so
What are you talking about? No, we're heavily invested.
The whole idea was to identify the opportunity. That's what I wanted to do. I've been buying and selling wood. I'd retired, kind of, but not retired. Actual.
Yeah.
I'd still kept involved with several companies as a consultant. And we're still in touch with everybody in the industry. So it was really a case of slowly, I knew you couldn't go into this with a sledgehammer and be totally disruptive. So but the good thing is, it is a very tight industry, as we know.
Yeah.
There's nothing, I don't think there's any industry could be as tight as ours. I mean, everyone knows where everyone's out for breakfast, don't they? I mean, that's the way it is.
Yeah, that's true. But so, I mean, if we sort of take peaks and troughs, I'm trying to work out where the demand for or in a Woodscanner would be the highs and lows in the market. So, for instance, if we go through the time of COVID, say late 2020, early 2021, it's a complete. It's a bit like Russia at the fall of the communist regime. It's a cowboy world. You literally see people trying to sort of stop lorries in the street and try and persuade them to drop their wood off in your yard instead of round the corner. I mean, there was such a shortage of material. Was that a bad time for Woodscanner? And when the market's weak, is it a good time for Woodscanner, or does it sort of ride through it all?
No, I think Woodscanner won. Let's be clear. COVID, when it kicked off, was not ideal for Woodscanner because people had no need to sell their product. There were queues.
Exactly.
Like you said, down the road with people with barrels of money trying to buy the wood.
Yeah.
There was no issue. So the one thing about sort of online selling, and you need a database. And you asked me before about where we get our customers from. You have to build up an audience, don't you? So when you go and see a buyer, he says, "How many sellers have you got?" When you go and see a seller, they say, "How many buyers have you got?" So there's this yin yang. So I think could you call it critical mass? You need a critical mass, of the industry, of buyers and sellers. So when COVID hit, obviously it kicked us in the nuts regarding selling anything.
I bet.
But actually, we had loads of buyers coming on looking for product. We were just in a crap position that we didn't have enough product to satisfy the wants.
You and everybody else. Yeah.
Exactly. But what we were able to do was register all these buyers. So we got to know, hundreds of buyers, besides a little bit of international reach, which, you can touch on later. We sort of were beginning to get to know the UK's buyers. Some people were very loyal with us and they made their sales and done very, very well. Say people picking up 100 grand. And I used to think I think our fees were around £1,000 a year, something in that region, between 1,000 and 2,000.
Yeah.
What is the lifetime value of a customer, So our service is very cheap.
Yeah.
And it gets you in front of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And if you just get one customer out of it, you're doing, your money's been well spent. Plus, you get that opportunity to put on special offers or deals. We do lots of other things just besides the marketplace, or we did do. So it was a very intuitive site for people. So we thought it was a great place to be. So during that COVID, as you say, Keith, not great for selling, but great for us registering buyers and build up that side of it.
Got you in position. I can absolutely see that.
And now, buyers that you've got using the site, are you getting a lot of repeat business or repeat trade with those buyers? Are they coming back again and again to look at the website?
Yes and no. We lose a certain amount by this tremendous word we spoke about, disintermediation. It's very relevant because what you do, and one of the failings of the Woodscanner platform is that we connect to people.
Yeah.
And of course, if we connect with X company with Y company, Y company gives that lead to their salesman, and he goes in and says, "Don't use Woodscanner next time, come directly to us." And we get that. We get it. We go, yeah. Not perfect, but we get it. What can we learn from that? What can we change? So we did get a lot of repeat business, but less and less because disintermediation did kick in, and it became more difficult because we were narrowing our our focus, really.
Yeah, yeah.
How we connect with people.
So, in terms of, we heard about like the largest sale, any sort of weird inquiries or sales? Careful how you answer this, Andy. We're not. Don't want to drift too far.
Dig out the dirt.
A lovely one.
Wood means
Al Hoover in Vancouver, and I travelled across Canada with Al, looking at different sawmill OSB mills, and when he was at Georgia Pacific. So it was really an interesting time. And he rang me once, and he asked me about French oak. And he'd had an inquiry, so he's still involved in the industry at a very big level, and he'd spent quite a lot of time, I think, in Australia. And he wanted French oak for a winery.
Right.
In Australia. And you think, someone in Vancouver rang, Andy and Barnett for,
to sort out some French oak.
Australia. So really, that's about as, as wide a range as you get. We've been heavily involved recently with Turkey. Funny enough, they were. Remember the earthquakes there? They had quite a lot of timber going in there for the earthquakes, and I think a lot of it was being funded by the World Bank. And I think it must have been going in from Russia. So I know it was, because I saw the spec, and it was a very Russian spec, lots of 6 O's and that.
Yes.
And they came to us and asked, could we help them find huge volumes of wood in Europe to go and solve the problems they were having, an earthquake in this earthquake-torn region of Turkey. So you do get an awful lot of stuff. I work with the Chilean government, do quite a bit with the embassy in trying to promote some of their companies and advise some of their companies on, clients they should use in the UK. So we've become a bit of we've got a great database, We are trying to specialise and link people together and help them. And of course, earlier on I was going to say, we didn't need, I'm doing this without a big staff. So I'm doing this, using contractors to help me and not holding a big staff.
Yeah. So that's
why the whole idea was having, identified the opportunity we spoke about was that Bill Gates come in, and buy source. Someone will come in with a big funding, with a big, team who could really help deliver Woodscanner on the big stage. Yeah. I don't have the finance to do that. You can throw a lot of money at this.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
But, I mean, as you say, you described yourself, or describe Woodscanner as a digital service provider, so it kind of goes beyond the marketplace to an extent.
Absolutely, 100% it does, yeah. And increasingly so, more and more people are going to be saying, how do we do this? Or, you've got this product, or I've got plantation teak from Brazil, how can we bring that into the UK? What's our market? And we can say, look, we can direct you, we've got, we can help you if you want, a very focused, snipered market, or, if you want a scattergun approach, we can help you there. Yeah. So, we're building up, this sort of, these digital assets, I think you'd call them, to help people. Yeah. So and in an affordable way. And that keeps me going. I enjoy that. Yeah.
So Woodscanner 2 or 2.0?
Yeah, we better get on to that, because time keeps whizzing on. Yeah, we need to find out about Woodscanner 2.
Well, the smart place to find timber, that's what it's going to be sort of tagged as.
Right.
So it's a place where you go and you're stuck, really. So it's like Woodscanner 1, but different. So the big failing on Woodscanner 1, if you call it a failing, I still think it's an amazing platform and site. It is.
Yeah, it is.
But I couldn't get people to keep their stock up to date. And that was a real, battle. And when I say battle, because I know the guys, I can't keep ringing people saying, update your stock.
Yeah.
Update. There comes a point where you have to say, look, they don't want to do that. You can't push them.
Yeah.
And because this industry is so tight, you've got to be careful how you tread. And I was very conscious that the one thing I wanted with Woodscanner is that it wouldn't be disruptive, and it would be an additional channel for people.
That's key.
Not a replacement channel for what they did brilliantly.
Yeah,
because they did do brilliantly, and they do brilliantly. We just want to be, an additional channel. As I said we're in the digital age. We need something to help us.
Yeah.
And the younger guys entering our industry need something as well.
Yeah.
And Keith, you and I worked in Bill Base, didn't we?
Yeah.
Well, 140 branches across the United Kingdom and Ireland. And those guys wanted information. They didn't know where to get things, did they?
No, exactly. Just giving them... And also the way that gosh, I do sound aged, but seriously, younger people use digital media and all of that sort of IT-based stuff is just so different from the way that older people do. It's just going to be natural. It's a natural way to do business.
Of course it is. Of course it is. You only got your kids and your grandkids. And, you might think you're quite good at something until they come on. They're fearless, aren't they? They're fearless. They just go in and go boom, 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 and we're going on.
Yeah,
what they call mum and dad used to be with the remote control.
Well, there you go.
The term is digital natives, isn't it? They kind of know from birth how to use this stuff.
It's instinctive, completely.
I don't know what we are. So digital dinosaurs.
So Woodscanner 2 is about appealing to that audience, really, of trying to make it easier. It's where you go in your stuff when you haven't got a plan B. You go, oh, shit, where do I get this from?
Yeah.
And so we want to use all that data that we collected in Woodscanner 1, put it together so people can find. So it's more, I suppose, like a digital directory, really, where people, but a very smart one. So you can actually create an inquiry in the digital inquiry. In the digital directory if you want to. So it's not just a case you can find somebody. You can actually say, I want, 10 packs of birch plywood or something, and we'll identify the best people to receive that inquiry based on some criteria they've given us. It'll just ping them an email.
Yeah.
And say, this client. And people will be able to negotiate in private, because the other thing about Woodscanner 1, we really want people to put their prices out there.
And they're not happy to do that.
No, the industry kicked us in the nuts and said we don't want to do that. No. We're not keen to do that.
Yeah.
And I get it. Again, I get it. I accept it. Don't necessarily agree with everything, but I do get it.
Yeah.
So, now they'll be able to do it in private. So they don't have to keep their stock up to date. Just tell us what product categories they sell into.
That's really smart.
They don't have to display their prices. We'll just send them the inquiry.
Yeah.
And if you're a buyer, you can just find, it's the place where you go in your stuff,
I
when
think
you want to buy a load of Fork 2, you know where to go. But when you need, some Douglas fir or you need something different, Woodscanner will help you.
Can the sellers still post offers that they've got,
We're
any
going
moment
to
in
have
time?
a deals page. We're going to have all that sort of good stuff that we did on the other one.
Yeah.
But, but the marketplace, we're going to sort of maybe... So we built something called online stock list. So we're going to help, big importers and people who want to put their stock on their website. So we're going to use that marketplace in a slightly different way. Yeah. And that's that bit where I said, the way you start is not the way you finish. You learn a lot on the journey.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. And how is Woodscanner 2, how is that going to be sort of monetised? What's the way that it's, people using it, how do they pay for it? Or
what we'll do is just charge people a subscription. The sellers a subscription. Anyone who wants to sell, we'll charge them a subscription. Yeah. And the buyers are free. So it's a very easy model, I have to say that, the gain for the sellers is huge, I believe. Value for money, it's not going to be an exorbitant fee. And I know this sounds a little bit stupid, but I've never done it for the money.
No, and honestly...
I've done it because I've seen the gap, I want to do it, and if someone comes along and buys it for a lot of money, fantastic. But if they don't, I've enjoyed, being in the industry, keeping my footprint on it, and this is what I wanted to do. I want to help our industry move forward.
Yeah, no, it's great. We're coming towards the point where we're going to have to start thinking about wrapping up. But I was going to ask, are there any particular sort of sectors of the industry who tend to be more into Woodscanner than others? But I suppose I actually really want to ask it the other way around now. Are there any parts of the industry that don't really interact with Woodscanner? Because I can't think why anyone wouldn't.
No, I can't. No, I think I'm not. I think the one area I found most difficult on Woodscanner 1, I don't think we'll have it on Woodscanner 2. It's not the same. Was our homegrown market, because there's so few of them, and I understand that. So people I knew well, I think I thought they were a bit dismissive of it, and I understand why. And they have this. I listened at the conference, they were calling, there was a little section on the homegrown market in the Global Softwood Conference in London this year, or in November when it was. And they were talking about loyalty. And the one thing that struck me about loyalty is, because I was a buyer for 30-odd years as well.
Yes.
was, yeah, I get loyalty, but I also like to keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
You know, that feeling. I've also got credit limits to think of, so you can't give you everything.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm busy and I want to share it around as well. And as I grow, I might grow with you, but I might decide to divest that. So it's always a little concern that people are a bit... In our industry, I remember... I know you're wrapping up, Keith, but just to sort of summarise that, I remember being in Sweden once with an agent and a sawmill. And I'd taken some guests out with me, some of my staff, to meet the sawmill and the agent. And they were in a really black mood with me. And I said, what's the problem? And they said, you've been buying off someone else. And honestly, I said, yeah. They said, well, he used to work for us and we don't like it.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, there's this sort of grip on people, where a seller thinks they own the buyer, and that's actually not the case.
No, no.
And should never be the case.
Gosh, yeah, to be...
For our industry. So there's a line where loyalty and sort of, because everyone can point to COVID and say, well, if you weren't loyal, you wouldn't have got any good COVID, but we were loyal to you, so you must stick with us. And I kind of get it in a way, but in another way, I think actually...
Yeah.
It should be open. There should be that transparency and visibility for people. And, if you're in, I don't know, Liverpool and you want to buy some wood, people are shipping it up from Tilbury. Well, actually, the same wood's available in Liverpool, If we're going to be, a really green economy and we want, a low carbon output, we've got to deal with things like that.
Quite right.
So knowing where things are locally is a big deal as well.
Yeah. But you sound pretty positive about the future of Woodscanner.
I absolutely am. Yeah, it will offer a great service, for people when they want to find products. It's not a game changer, but it's really, it continues the momentum of doing things differently and trying to be a little bit digital. And having been in the Science Museum, said it's information technology we're in. Let's make it work for our industry. Yeah. In a way that doesn't offend anyone. Yeah. That's what I want to do.
That sounds good.
That's really good. I think that's about the right point to wrap up. But seriously, Andy, that was really, really helpful. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we're going to watch this space.
Yeah, it's
a lot of fun. I'm talking to you lads. It's a lot of fun, I have to say.
You need to get out a bit more, Andy.
Find some new friends.
Can I tell you something though?
Yeah.
I told you, I was thinking about doing a Talking Timber podcast myself a while ago. I thought it'd be, a thing to do, but I could never do it like you. You're very gifted in this field.
Flattery will get you everywhere. Yeah.
That's another point I owe him.
It is the top. You are the top of the church.
Well,
but you need to. There's a little bit of music that you should start a podcast with and end it with. And I was going to use it. It's called Talking Timber.
Oh, I know the one. Yeah. Actually, that's a good point.
It's a bit raunchy and a bit upbeat, but it'll give your podcast a bit of life, I have to say.
Oh, that's cool.
You may be old doyens and old dames, but I think a little bit of Talking Timber will give it a lift.
I think we should probably go a bit less pantomime, a bit more sort of rock and roll, didn't we? Yeah. Although I do rather...
I think you'll find it. I think you'll find it'll work.
Yeah, I do rather like the makeup though, so I don't know whether I want to give up the pantomime dame. But...
Get the old slap on here.
Andy, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for sparing all your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we look forward to sort of having a chance for a catch up in the future, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
because I only got halfway through my script, so there is another half.
Yes. That's good. Woodscanner 2, Chapter 2.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah. Yeah, great to speak with you both.
Thanks, Andy.
You too.
Mike, I think you're fairly new into Woodscanner. I mean, I knew obviously more about it than you did before we started this podcast. What did you make of it?
No, I thought it was fascinating. And I also think, we were talking about new recruits, young people coming into the industry. Yeah. They would probably assume that something like Woodscanner would be there.
I genuinely do think...
These so-called digital natives.
Exactly. I genuinely think that that's right. And Andy was talking a lot about essentially data capture. That's something that I think this industry could do so much more about.
Yeah.
I mean, in my little business that I've got, we do quite a lot of data management, mainly because we've got a guy who's really, really good at it. But it's absolutely opened my eyes up to the potential of that.
Yeah.
So I think Woodscanner's got quite a lot of things going for it across a range of mediums. Or whatever.
Yeah, and I think, the phrase digital service provider as well is, the world is, as I say, the world is going digital. The world has gone digital.
It's gone digital.
We look to the internet for everything.
And one thing we didn't touch on with Andy is where AI comes into all of this as well. And I bet you, when we get him on again at some time in the future, I bet you we can have a bit of a chat about that and where that rolls into all of this.
Yeah, definitely.
Because, Woodscanner's the right sort of platform to build with AI as well, I would think.
Yeah.
Says he who can barely tone a phone on. But
yeah. No, I think we're living in fear and trembling of AI, but I'm sure, but it is being put to very practical uses already.
Yeah.
Including writing articles instead of journalists, I believe.
Yeah, let's not go there, Mike. I know you're bitter and twisted about that. No, seriously, that was really good.
No, we should catch up with Andy again in the future.
Definitely, 100%. That was good.